She walked into that courthouse to sign divorce papers, believing the hardest part was already over. She was 7 months pregnant, alone, exhausted, ready to close this chapter and move on with her life. But when her husband looked up and saw her belly for the first time, his face went pale, and standing right behind him,
When the
dressed
world
in designer
shuts you
clothes
down,
with a diamond
how do you
bracelet
find the
catching the
strength
light,
to carry on?
was his mistress. 3 months
Please,
pregnant.
Elena,
What happened next
don't
would destroy
leave me.
everything Elena believed about her marriage,
It wasn't what it
her
looked
best
like.
friend, and the family she thought she was joining.
The transfer was made
They
on
tried
my
to take her
orders.
money.
No one else knew.
They tried to
There
take
it
her
is.
home. They tried
Guilty.
to take her job. And when that was not enough, they tried to take her baby. But they made one fatal mistake. They underestimated her. This is a story about betrayal, survival, and the moment a woman stops being a victim and becomes unstoppable. If you believe in justice, in karma, and in women who refuse to break, you are in the right place. Drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, hit that subscribe button, and stay until the end. Trust me, you do not want to miss how this one ends. Let us begin. The courthouse hallway smelled like old paper and broken promises. Elena Mitchell stood before the bathroom mirror, her trembling hands struggling with the buttons of her wool coat. The fluorescent lights above cast harsh shadows across her face, highlighting the dark circles beneath her eyes and the exhaustion carved into every feature. She had not slept more than 3 hours in weeks, and it showed. But beneath the exhaustion, something else lived in her expression: determination. The kind that only comes after you have cried yourself empty and discovered there is still something left worth fighting for. She adjusted her coat carefully, pulling it closed over her 7-month pregnant belly. The fabric strained slightly at the buttons, but it would hold. It had to hold. She was not ready for anyone to see what she had been hiding, especially not him. Today was supposed to be simple: sign the papers, end the marriage, walk away with whatever dignity she had left. She and Marcus had agreed to handle this amicably, like two adults who had simply grown apart. No lawyers necessary, he had said. No drama, just a clean break. She had believed him. Elena took one final look at her reflection and whispered to herself, "You can do this. 30 minutes, and it will all be over." She had no idea how wrong she was. The walk from the bathroom to courtroom B felt endless. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, each step echoing through the nearly empty corridor. Late autumn light filtered through the tall windows, gray and weak, as if even the sun could not commit to showing up today. She passed a young couple holding hands, their faces bright with nervous excitement, probably here for a marriage license. Elena remembered that feeling, that certainty that love would be enough to carry them through anything. 5 years ago, she had walked into a courthouse just like this one, her hand clasped in Marcus's, believing she had found her forever. Forever, it turned out, had an expiration date. She pushed through the heavy wooden doors and stepped into the courtroom. It was smaller than she expected, with worn wooden benches and a judge's bench that had seen better decades. A clerk sat at a side desk, shuffling papers without looking up. The American flag hung limply in the corner, as if it too was tired of witnessing the end of things. And there, seated at the front table on the left side, was Marcus Bennett. He looked exactly as he always did. Expensive charcoal suit perfectly tailored, dark hair styled with precision, the kind of handsome that made women look twice and men feel inadequate. Even now, even after everything, Elena felt a small flutter in her chest at the sight of him. She hated herself for it. Marcus glanced up as she entered, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. With Marcus, it was always hard to tell where one ended and the other began. "Elena," his voice was smooth, controlled. "You came." "Of course I came." She kept her voice steady as she approached the opposite table. "We agreed on today." "We did." He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "You look different." Elena's hand instinctively moved toward her belly before she caught herself. She lowered it to her side, keeping her coat closed. "It has been 3 months, Marcus. People changed, some more than others, apparently." Before Elena could respond, the door behind her opened again. She turned, expecting perhaps the judge or another clerk. Instead, a man in a $3,000 suit strode in, briefcase in hand, radiating the kind of confidence that only came from billing $500 an hour. Mr. Bennett, the man nodded at Marcus, then turned a cold gaze toward Elena. And you must be the wife. Elena's stomach dropped. Who is this? Marcus leaned back in his chair, something cruel flickering in his eyes. This is Richard Hartwell, my attorney. Your attorney? Elena heard her own voice rising. You said we did not need attorneys. You said we could handle this ourselves. I said a lot of things, Elena. Marcus straightened his tie. I have since reconsidered. Richard Hartwell was already laying documents on the table, spreading them out like a general preparing for battle. Mrs. Bennett, I would advise you to take a seat. We have much to discuss. Elena remained standing, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her temples. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. I do not understand. She looked from the lawyer to Marcus. We agreed on a simple dissolution. 50-50 split, no complications. Yes, well, Marcus examined his fingernails with practiced disinterest. That was before I discovered certain irregularities in our marriage. Irregularities? Richard Hartwell cleared his throat. Mrs. Bennett, my client is filing for divorce on the grounds of abandonment, financial mismanagement, and emotional instability. We have documentation supporting each claim. The words hit Elena like physical blows. Abandonment, financial mismanagement, emotional instability. Each accusation more absurd than the last. That is insane, her voice cracked. Marcus, I never abandoned anything. You asked for the separation. You moved out. That is not how I remember it. Marcus's tone was ice. And more importantly, that is not how the court will remember it. Richard produced a folder thick with papers. We have statements from neighbors confirming that Mrs. Bennett was frequently absent from the marital home during the final months of cohabitation. We have bank records showing questionable transfers from joint accounts. And we have documentation from Mrs. Bennett's own therapist suggesting a pattern of erratic behavior and emotional volatility. Elena felt the room tilt. Her therapist. She had seen Dr. Morrison exactly 4 times, trying to understand why her husband had become so distant, why their marriage was crumbling despite her every effort to save it. Those sessions were supposed to be confidential. Sacred. How did you get my therapy records? Neither man answered. Those sessions were about trying to save our marriage. Elena's voice trembled with equal parts fury and disbelief. I went to therapy because you made me feel like I was going crazy. Because every time I tried to talk to you about our problems, you told me I was being too emotional, too demanding, too much. Marcus shrugged. The records speak for themselves. Elena gripped the edge of the table in front of her, fighting the urge to collapse. This could not be happening. She had come here expecting closure, expecting to walk away and start rebuilding her life. Instead, she was walking into an ambush. And she was completely, utterly alone. The courtroom door opened once more, and Elena's blood turned to ice. Because walking through that door, dressed in a cream-colored designer dress that cost more than Elena's monthly salary, was a woman she recognized. Victoria Chase, Marcus's executive assistant. The woman Elena had met at exactly 3 company events, always smiling, always professional, always standing just a little too close to Elena's husband. Victoria crossed the room with the practiced grace of a runway model, but as she turned to take her seat behind Marcus, Elena saw what the flowing fabric of her dress could not quite hide. A small but unmistakable baby bump, maybe 3 months along. The air left Elena's lungs as if she had been punched. I believe you know Victoria. Marcus's voice carried a note of cruel amusement. She has been such a support through this difficult time. Victoria placed a manicured hand on Marcus's shoulder, her diamond bracelet catching the light. I would not have missed this for the world. Elena's mind raced, trying to process what she was seeing. The separation had been Marcus's idea. 3 months ago, he had sat her down and explained so calmly, so reasonably, that he needed space to figure things out. Work stress, he had said, pressure from the company. He just needed time to breathe. She had believed him. She had believed every word, and all along Victoria had been 3 months pregnant, which meant the affair had been going on for much longer. Months, maybe years. Elena stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak, watching her entire understanding of her marriage crumble into dust. And then her coat fell open. She did not realize it at first. The top button, straining against the pressure of her belly, had finally given up the fight. The heavy wool swung aside, revealing what she had tried so desperately to hide. 7 months pregnant. Undeniably, visibly, impossibly pregnant. Marcus's face went pale. The smug confidence drained from his expression like water from a cracked glass. His eyes locked on Elena's belly, wide with shock. And for one long moment, the entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. You are... He could not finish the sentence. Pregnant. Elena's voice came out stronger than she felt. Yes, Marcus, I am pregnant. 7 months. Your child. The one you would have known about if you had bothered to come home even once during our separation instead of playing house with your assistant. Victoria's perfectly composed face flickered with something ugly. Fear, maybe, or rage. Marcus found his voice. When is it due? January. His attorney leaned in, whispering urgently. Marcus's expression hardened, the shock giving way to something cold and calculated. Convenient timing. His voice was ice, right when you would need maximum financial support. Convenient? Elena almost laughed. You think I planned this? You think I wanted to be pregnant and alone while my husband was, add this to the evidence. Marcus cut her off, speaking to his attorney. Clear attempt at financial manipulation. She probably got pregnant on purpose to trap me. The words hit Elena like a slap. This was not the man she had married. Or maybe it was, and she had just been too blind to see it. Victoria rose from her seat, smoothing her dress over her own small bump. She approached Elena with the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. Oh, honey. Victoria's voice dripped with false sympathy. Did he not tell you about us? We have been together for 2 years. 2 years of weekend getaways and late-night meetings and all those business trips you thought were so boring you never wanted to join. She leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough that the whole room could still hear. You were just keeping his bed warm until I was ready to take your place. Elena's vision blurred. 2 years. Their entire last 2 years of marriage had been a lie. Get away from me. Her voice was barely a whisper. I am trying to help you, sweetie. Victoria's smile sharpened. Take whatever settlement they offer and disappear. You do not want to fight us. You will lose everything. Lena looked past Victoria to Marcus, searching for something, anything of the man she had loved. The man who had held her hand at their wedding, who had promised to cherish her until death parted them. He would not meet her eyes. Sign the papers, Elena. His voice was tired, dismissive. Let us just get this over with. The courtroom doors burst open, and a woman with wild red hair and an expression of pure fury stormed in. Carolyn Brooks, Elena's best friend since their freshman year at Chapel Hill, and one of the most aggressive divorce attorneys in Charlotte, crossed the room in 4 furious strides. This proceeding is over. Carolyn's voice cracked like a whip. My client will not be signing anything today. Marcus's attorney rose. And you are? Caroline Brooks, counsel for Elena Mitchell. She slapped a business card on the table. And I have about 15 questions about how you obtained confidential medical records without consent. But we can save those for the formal complaints I will be filing with the state bar. She turned to Elena, her expression softening. Come on. We are leaving. Elena let Caroline guide her toward the door, her legs moving on autopilot. As they reached the threshold, Victoria's voice followed them. You cannot run forever, Elena. We always get what we want. Caroline did not slow down. Keep talking, sweetheart. Every word is going in my file. They pushed through the doors into the hallway, and Elena finally let herself breathe. But as the doors swung shut behind them, she heard Marcus's voice, cold and clear. Find out who the father really is. There is no way that baby is mine. 6 months earlier, everything had been different. Elena stood in the kitchen of the home she shared with Marcus, carefully arranging rose petals across the dining table. Their 5-year anniversary was tomorrow, but she could not wait that long. Not with news this big. The pregnancy test sat wrapped in a tiny box, nestled inside tissue paper like the precious gift it was. She had taken 4 tests over 2 days, unable to believe the results until there was no room for doubt. A baby. After 3 years of trying, of temperature charts and ovulation trackers, and one devastating miscarriage that still made her chest ache when she thought about it, she was finally pregnant. 8 weeks along, the doctor had confirmed just that morning. She had not told Marcus about the appointment, had not told him about the missed period or the morning nausea she had been hiding. She wanted this moment to be perfect, a surprise that would bring them back together after months of growing distance. Because if Elena was honest with herself, something had been wrong for a while now. Marcus worked late almost every night. Weekends disappeared into client meetings and business trips. When he was home, he was distracted, his phone constantly buzzing with messages he never let her see. Their conversations had become logistics. Did you pay the electric bill? The dry cleaning is ready. I will be late again tonight. Do not wait up. Elena told herself it was temporary. The company was expanding. There were pressures she did not understand. Once things settled down, Marcus would come back to her. They would be a team again. This baby would fix everything. Her phone buzzed, a text from Carrie. How did it go at the doctor? Spill? Elena smiled, typing back quickly. Confirmed. 8 weeks. I am telling Marcus tonight. Wish me luck. 3 heart emojis appeared immediately, followed by, he is going to lose his mind. Call me tomorrow with every detail. Elena had known Carrie for 15 years, since they had been assigned as roommates freshman year, and discovered they were both scholarship kids from small towns, desperately pretending they belonged among all the prep school kids. Carrie had gone on to law school and built a reputation as a divorce attorney who made cheating husbands cry. Elena had become a pediatric nurse, spending her days with sick children and her nights trying to build a family of her own. They could not have been more different, but Carrie was the sister Elena had never had. The one person who knew everything about her, who never judged, who always picked up the phone at 2 in the morning when Elena needed to talk. By 7 o'clock, the table was set, the candles were lit, and Elena had changed into the blue dress Marcus always said brought out her eyes. His car would pull into the garage any minute. Except it did not. 7:30, 8, 8:45. Elena sat alone at the anniversary table, watching the candles burn down, checking her phone every 30 seconds for a message that never came. Finally, at 9:15, her phone lit up with Marcus's name. Elena, I am so sorry. His voice was rushed, distracted. Client emergency. Big deal falling through. I will be here all night. All night? Elena heard the crack in her own voice. Marcus, I made dinner. I had something important to tell you. Can it wait until tomorrow? I really cannot talk right now. In the background, Elena heard a woman's laugh, high and musical. Who is that? What? Nobody. Just the TV in the conference room. A door closed, muffling the sound. Look, I have to go. Do not wait up. The line went dead. Elena sat there for a long moment, the pregnancy test box still wrapped and waiting. Then slowly she blew out the candles, put the leftovers in the refrigerator, and went to bed alone. She did not give Marcus the test the next day, or the day after that. She kept waiting for the right moment, for an evening when he came home before midnight, when he was not glued to his phone, when he looked at her like he used to. That moment never came. 2 weeks later, Marcus sat her down in the living room with an expression she had never seen before. I need some space, he said, his voice carefully neutral. The pressure at work is destroying me, and I feel like I cannot breathe. I think I should move into the downtown condo for a while, just until I figure things out. Elena felt the floor drop beneath her. You want to separate? Not permanently, just a break. Time to think. A break from what? From me? Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair in the way that always made him look exhausted and somehow still handsome. From everything, Elena. From the expectations, the pressure, the constant feeling that I am failing at every part of my life. You are not failing. Elena reached for his hand. Marcus, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. I do not want counseling. His voice sharpened, then softened again. I just need time. A few weeks, maybe a month. Then we can talk about next steps. Elena wanted to tell him about the baby. The words were right there, pressing against her teeth, but something stopped her. Some instinct that said this was not the moment, that telling him now would feel like manipulation, like she was trying to trap him into staying. She would tell him when he came back, when things were better. Okay, she heard herself say, if that is what you need. Marcus looked relieved, too relieved. He was packed and gone within the hour, as if he had been ready for days. That night, Elena called Carrie. He what? Carrie's voice could have shattered glass. He asked for a separation and you said okay? He needs space, Carrie. He is stressed. Elena, honey, I love you, but you need to wake up. Men do not ask for space because they are stressed. They ask for space because they want to do something they cannot do with their wife watching. Marcus would not cheat on me. The silence on the other end of the line lasted just a beat too long. Just be careful, Carrie finally said. And for God's sake, tell him about the baby. He does not get to have space from his own child. But Elena did not tell him. Every time she planned to, every time she picked up the phone to call or typed out a message, something stopped her. Fear, pride, the growing suspicion that Carrie might be right and that knowing the truth would destroy her. So she kept silent, and the weeks turned into months. Elena went to her prenatal appointments alone. She watched her belly grow in the mirror of their empty house. She felt the first fluttering kicks and had no one to share them with. Marcus texted occasionally. Checking in, he called it. Quick messages asking if she was okay, if she needed anything. He never asked to see her, never suggested dinner or coffee or even a phone call longer than 3 minutes. She started to realize that the separation was not temporary. It was an exit strategy. By the time Elena accepted the truth, she was 6 months pregnant and her husband had not touched her in over 8 months. She filed the divorce papers herself, choosing the mutual dissolution option because she still could not quite believe that Marcus was the villain Carrie kept insisting he was. When she texted him the news, his response came within seconds. That is probably for the best. I will have my lawyer reach out to coordinate. His lawyer, after all his talk about handling things amicably. That should have been her first warning. Her brother Daniel called that night. He had always had some kind of sixth sense when it came to his little sister. What is wrong? No greeting, no small talk. That was Daniel. I filed for divorce today. Good. That guy was always too smooth for his own good. A pause. Are you okay? I will be. You need me to come out there? Elena almost laughed. Daniel lived in Houston now, running a security company he had built from nothing after his years in the Marines. He had a wife, a business, a life. He could not just drop everything because his sister's marriage had fallen apart. I am fine, Danny, really. You are a terrible liar, always have been. His voice softened, which was as close to emotional as Daniel ever got. Call me if you need anything, day or night. I mean it. I know. After she hung up, Elena sat in the nursery she had secretly started preparing. Yellow walls because she did not know yet if the baby was a boy or a girl. A white crib she had assembled herself, cursing at the instructions while refusing to ask for help. A rocking chair that had belonged to her grandmother. She placed a hand on her belly and felt her baby kick. It is just you and me now, she whispered. But that is going to be enough, I promise. She did not know yet how thoroughly that promise would be tested. The week after the courthouse ambush, Elena learned exactly how far Marcus was willing to go to destroy her. It started with the bank accounts. She walked into the grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon, cart half full of the healthy foods her doctor recommended for the baby. Spinach, Greek yogurt, whole grain bread, prenatal vitamins. The small luxuries of a woman trying to give her child the best possible start. At the checkout, she swiped her card. Declined. Elena felt her face flush. I am sorry, can you try again? There must be a mistake. The cashier, a teenage boy with acne and bored eyes, swiped again. Declined. Do you have another form of payment, ma'am? Elena pulled out her backup card, the one connected to their joint savings, the account that held everything she and Marcus had built over 5 years of marriage. Declined. Her hands trembling, Elena opened her banking app. The screen loaded slowly, each second stretching into eternity. And then she saw it. Account frozen. Pending investigation. All access suspended until further notice. Every account. Checking, savings. The emergency fund she had carefully built over years of nursing shifts. The account where she had been secretly saving for the nursery. All of it. Gone. Ma'am? The cashier's voice had shifted from bored to uncomfortable. The line is getting kind of long. Elena looked up. Behind her, a woman with a full cart sighed loudly. A man in a business suit checked his watch with obvious irritation. A mother with two small children whispered something to them, and they all stared at Elena with a mixture of pity and judgment. The pregnant woman who could not pay for groceries. Elena felt the heat crawl up her neck, spreading across her cheeks like wildfire. She had $47 in her wallet, exactly $47 in cash, because Marcus had always handled the finances, always told her not to worry about money, always assured her that he would take care of everything. Another lie, another trap she had walked into with her eyes wide open. I need to put some things back, she heard herself say. The organic produce went first, then the prenatal vitamins. $28 for a bottle of pills that her doctor said were essential for the baby's development. Then the whole grain bread, the Greek yogurt, the fresh fruit. She kept the eggs, the milk, a loaf of the cheapest white bread, a bag of rice, $43.17. The cashier bagged her pathetic purchases without meeting her eyes. The woman behind her muttered something about people who should not have children if they cannot afford them. Elena walked out of that store with her head held high and her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. That night, she sat on the floor of her tiny apartment, surrounded by bills she could no longer pay, and called Carrie. They froze everything. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Every account. I have $47, Carrie. I am 7 months pregnant, and I have $47 to my name. Those bastards. Carrie's voice crackled with fury. They filed an emergency motion claiming you were dissipating marital assets. It is complete garbage, manufactured evidence, but it takes time to fight. Weeks, maybe months. I do not have months. I have rent due in 2 weeks, utilities, my car payment. Elena pressed her hand against her belly, where the baby was kicking, oblivious to the disaster unfolding around them. How am I supposed to survive? Listen to me. I am going to wire you money tonight. No arguments. You can pay me back when we crush these people in court. We are going to win, right? The pause before Carrie answered lasted just a beat too long. Just long enough for Elena to hear everything her best friend was not saying. We are going to fight like hell, Carrie finally said. That is all I can promise. 3 days later, the eviction notice arrived. Elena stared at the paper in her hands, reading the words over and over as if repetition might change their meaning. The notice claimed she was under investigation for fraud, that her continued tenancy posed a risk to the property, that she had 30 days to vacate. She drove to her landlord's office in a daze, her pregnant belly pressing against the steering wheel of the car that would probably be repossessed within the month. Mr. Patterson had always been kind to her, a grandfatherly man in his 70s who had waived her security deposit when she explained she was going through a divorce, who had brought her homemade cookies when he learned she was pregnant, who had told her just last month that she was the best tenant he had ever had. Now he would not meet her eyes. Mr. Patterson, please. You know me. You know I am not a fraud. I have never been late on rent. I have never caused a single problem. I am sorry, Mrs. Bennett. His hand shook as he slid the eviction paperwork across his desk. I got a call from a lawyer, a very expensive lawyer. He said if I did not take action, I would be personally liable, that they would sue me for everything I have. Someone paid you to evict me. I do not know anything about that. But his eyes flickered to the corner of his desk, where Elena noticed a new gold watch, a watch that had not been there last month. I am just following the rules. 30 days. That is all I can give you. Lena stood slowly, her back aching, her heart breaking. I thought you were a good man, Mr. Patterson. He finally looked at her, and for just a moment, she saw shame flicker across his weathered face. I am sorry, he whispered. I really am. But sorry did not give her a place to live. Sorry did not feed her baby. Sorry did not undo the fact that Judith Bennett had reached across the city and destroyed one more piece of Elena's crumbling life. The hospital was next. Elena had worked as a pediatric nurse at Charlotte Presbyterian for 6 years. 6 years of 12-hour shifts, of holding frightened children's hands, of being the calm presence in the worst moments of families' lives. 6 years of excellent evaluations, of commendations, of patients who sent cards and flowers and called her their angel. None of that mattered when Judith Bennett made one phone call. Dr. Hendricks called her into his office on a Friday afternoon. He was a good man, Elena's supervisor for 3 years, someone who had always advocated for her and her patients. The fact that he could not meet her eyes told her everything she needed to know. The board received complaints about your mental fitness, he said, each word clearly painful for him to speak. Given the ongoing legal situation and the concerns raised, they have decided to place you on administrative leave pending a full review. What complaints? From who? I am not at liberty to say. It is my mother-in-law. Elena felt something crack inside her chest. Judith Bennett sits on 3 hospital boards in this city. She did this. Dr. Hendricks said nothing. His silence was the loudest confirmation she could have received. I have done nothing wrong. My evaluations have been perfect for 6 years. I have saved children's lives. I have held parents while their babies died. And now you are telling me that one phone call from a vindictive old woman can erase all of that? I will advocate for you in the review. Dr. Hendricks finally met her eyes, and she saw genuine anguish there. But until it is complete, I cannot let you work. I am sorry, Elena. I am truly sorry. Elena took the manila folder he offered, her temporary leave paperwork. 6 years of dedication reduced to a few forms and a signature. The children on my floor, she said quietly. Little Mikey Thompson. He is having surgery next week. He asked if I would be there when he woke up. What do I tell him? Dr. Hendricks had no answer. Elena walked out of Charlotte Presbyterian for what she knew might be the last time. Behind her, a child called out her name from a window. She did not turn around. If she turned around, she would break. And she could not afford to break. Not yet. In the span of 1 week, Marcus and his family had taken her money, her home, and her job. She sat on a bench outside a gas station on Moorhead Street, watching the rain fall in gray sheets, and tried to remember how to breathe. Around her, the city moved on, cars splashing through puddles, people hurrying under umbrellas, life continuing as if one woman's complete destruction was nothing more than background noise. Her phone was at 2%. She should save it for emergencies, but instead she found herself scrolling through old photos. Her wedding day, that ridiculous big white dress that Marcus had insisted on, even though she had wanted something simpler. His face when she walked down the aisle, the tears in his eyes that she had mistaken for love, their honeymoon in Hawaii, his arm around her waist as they watched the sunset. Forever, he had whispered. You and me, forever. The nursery she had painted last year before everything fell apart. Sunny yellow walls and a white crib and a rocking chair she had found at an antique store. She had imagined sitting in that chair, nursing her baby, singing lullabies while Marcus watched from the doorway. All lies, all ghosts of a future that had never existed. Her phone buzzed, 1% battery, unknown number. She almost did not answer. What was the point? Probably another creditor, another lawyer, another messenger delivering bad news from a world that had decided she did not deserve to exist. But something made her press accept. Elena? The voice was deep, familiar, and heavy with worry. A voice she had not heard in too long, because Marcus had always found reasons to skip family gatherings, to cut phone calls short, to keep her isolated from everyone who might have seen through him. Elena, it is Daniel. Carrie called me. Where are you? Daniel, her big brother, the one who had taught her to ride a bike, who had threatened to beat up her prom date, who had walked her down the aisle when their father could not be bothered to show up. She could not speak. If she opened her mouth, she would start crying and never stop. Elena, listen to me. Daniel's voice shifted into the calm, commanding tone she remembered from his Marine days. The voice that had kept his squad alive through 2 deployments. The voice that said, "Trust me, I will handle this. Tell me exactly where you are. I am getting on a plane tonight." Danny. Her voice cracked on his name. I do not. I cannot. You do not have to do anything. You do not have to be strong. You do not have to figure anything out. You just have to tell me where you are, and I will do the rest. Elena looked up at the GO station sign, blinking weakly against the gray sky. Quick stop on Moorhead Street, near the old textile mill. Do not move. 4 hours. I will be there in 4 hours. The line went dead. Elena sat there in the rain, one hand pressed to her belly where her daughter was kicking, and waited for someone to save her. It was the first time in months that anyone was coming. Daniel arrived at 3 in the morning, still wearing his work clothes from the security company he ran in Houston, looking like he had not slept in days. His truck pulled up to the gas station, and before Elena could even stand, he was out of the vehicle and striding toward her. He did not say anything at first, did not ask questions, did not demand explanations. He just wrapped her in a hug that felt like coming home, holding her tight while she finally let herself fall apart. All the fear and humiliation and loneliness she had been carrying for months poured out of her in ugly, gasping sobs. Her body shook so hard she could barely stand. But Daniel held her up, just like he always had, just like he always would. I got you. His voice was steady, the same voice that had promised to protect her when they were kids and their father's temper made the walls shake. The same voice that had called her from overseas, promising to come home safe. I got you, Lena. You are safe now. He drove her to Houston that night, 8 hours through the darkness, stopping only for gas and bathroom breaks. Elena slept most of the way, her head against the window, her dreams haunted by Marcus's cold eyes and Victoria's cruel smile. Maria was waiting when they arrived, Daniel's wife of 10 years, a family therapist with kind eyes and steady hands. She met them at the door with warm blankets, hot soup, and the kind of quiet competence that asked no questions and demanded no explanations. The guest room is ready, Maria said softly. There is a heating pad on the bed for your back. Sleep as long as you need. For 3 days, Elena did nothing but sleep. She woke only to eat, to use the bathroom, to feel her baby kick, and remind herself that something good still existed in the world. Maria brought her meals on trays. Daniel sat outside her door like a guard dog, turning away anyone who might disturb her rest. On the 4th day, she woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains and the smell of coffee brewing downstairs. Her baby kicked, strong and insistent, and Elena realized she was hungry for the first time in weeks. Really hungry. Not the mechanical need for fuel she had been experiencing, but actual appetite, actual desire to live. She found Daniel and Maria at the kitchen table, papers spread between them, speaking in low voices that stopped the moment she appeared. Morning, sleepyhead. Maria's smile was warm and real. How do you feel? Human. Almost. Elena lowered herself carefully into a chair, one hand supporting her aching back. What is all this? Daniel and Maria exchanged a look, the kind of look that married couples develop over years, entire conversations conducted without words. We have been doing some research. Daniel pushed a folder toward her. Into the Bennetts, their business dealings, their connections, their weak points. Elena opened the folder. Inside were printed articles, financial documents, photographs. Marcus at charity events with Victoria long before their separation. Judith shaking hands with judges and politicians. The Bennett family empire spread across dozens of pages. Danny, you do not have to do this. Yeah, I do. His jaw tightened in that familiar way, the look that meant he was ready to go to war. Nobody does this to my sister, nobody. Maria reached across the table and squeezed Elena's hand. Your brother has been on the phone with every contact he has. Former Marines, private investigators, lawyers who owe him favors. He is building you an army. I cannot afford an army. You do not have to. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes intense. But there is someone who can, someone who has been waiting for you to call. He slid a piece of paper across the table. A phone number, written in his careful print. Elena's heart stuttered. Grandma Ruth? When was the last time you talked to her? Elena tried to remember. 2 years? Maybe 3? Marcus had never liked her grandmother. He had called Ruth provincial and embarrassingly unsophisticated. He had always found reasons to skip family gatherings, to cut phone calls short, to keep Elena's life in Charlotte completely separate from her roots in Virginia. Marcus thought she was... Elena stopped, hearing how pathetic it sounded. Marcus thought, Marcus wanted. Marcus said, her entire marriage, reduced to the whims of a man who had never loved her. Marcus was isolating you. Maria's voice was gentle but firm. It is a classic pattern in controlling relationships. Textbook, actually. He separated you from everyone who might see through him. Your parents moved and you lost track of their address. Your friends dropped away one by one. Your grandmother was just another connection he needed to sever. Why? Because isolated people are easier to control, easier to manipulate, easier to destroy. Maria paused. And because people who love us can see when we are being mistreated, even when we cannot see it ourselves. Elena stared at the phone number, such a small thing. 10 digits that could reconnect her to a past she had almost forgotten. Call her. Daniel tapped the paper. Today, right now. Elena dialed the number with shaking fingers. It rang twice before a voice she had not heard in far too long answered. Well, it is about time. Grandma Ruth? Who else would it be, child? I have been waiting for this call for 3 years. Every Christmas, every birthday, every Sunday dinner. I set a place at my table hoping you would finally remember you had family who loved you. Elena's throat tightened so hard she could barely breathe. I am sorry. I am so sorry I have not... Hush. We do not have time for apologies. Apologies are for people who do not have wars to win. Ruth's voice sharpened into something fierce and familiar. Your brother told me everything. That man tried to break you, and from what I hear, he almost succeeded. Almost. Grandma, but here is what you need to understand, Elena Michelle Mitchell. You come from a long line of women who do not break. Your great-grandmother survived the Depression with 4 children and no husband. Your grandmother built a business while raising 3 kids alone. Your mother may have made her mistakes, but she survived things that would have destroyed weaker women. And you, Ruth's voice cracked just for a moment, you have more strength in your little finger than that entire Bennett family has in all their fancy suits and empty hearts. You bend, you bow, you even fall down sometimes. But you do not break. Do you understand me? Yes, ma'am. Good. Now, I am going to tell you something I should have told you years ago, something I have kept secret for 60 years because I wanted to see who my children and grandchildren really were, without gold clouding their vision. Elena felt Daniel and Maria watching her, their faces tense with anticipation. They already knew whatever was coming. Do you know how your grandfather really made his money? He was a pharmacist. He owned some drugstores. Ruth laughed, a dry sound that held more pain than humor. Oh, sweet child. He did not just own drugstores. He invented things, pharmaceutical formulas, the kind of patents that keep paying royalties long after the man who created them is gone. What are you saying? I am saying that I am not just comfortable, Elena. I am wealthy, very wealthy. I have kept it quiet for 60 years because money makes people ugly, and I have seen too many families destroyed by inheritance, squabbles and gold diggers and children who never learned to work because they knew they would inherit. Ruth paused. But I am 82 years old, and I have been saving my resources for exactly this kind of moment, for when one of my own needed protection from the wolves. Elena's mind spun, trying to process what she was hearing. Her grandmother? Wealthy? Secretly wealthy, all these years. How wealthy are we talking about? Ruth's laugh this time was genuine. Let me put it this way, child. The Bennett family thinks they are rich, they are comfortable, they have a nice house and some investments and enough money to bully people who cannot fight back. But they are not wealthy. They do not know what real wealth looks like. Her voice hardened. And they are about to find out what happens when they pick a fight with the wrong family. 2 days later, Elena stood in front of her grandmother's estate in Charlottesville, Virginia. and finally understood why Ruth had kept this secret. The house was not a house, it was a mansion. A sprawling colonial revival estate tucked away on 30 acres of rolling hills, with a circular driveway and a fountain and gardens that stretched as far as Elena could see. Gardeners worked the grounds. A housekeeper opened the front door. A chef prepared lunch in a kitchen bigger than Elena's entire apartment. Ruth waited in the foyer, smaller than Elena remembered, but with eyes that missed nothing and a spine that had never learned to bend. "Close your mouth, child. You will catch flies." She opened her arms. "Now come, give your grandmother a proper hug." The nursery Ruth had prepared made Elena cry. Soft sage green walls, because Ruth had always believed yellow was too harsh for newborns. White furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. A rocking chair with a hand-quilted cushion made from fabric that had belonged to Elena's great-grandmother. A window overlooking a garden that blazed with autumn colors, the last gasp of beauty before winter arrived. "This is too much." Elena ran her fingers over the crib rail, imagining her daughter sleeping here, safe and loved and protected. "All of this, it is too much. Nothing is too much for my great-grandchild." Ruth stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching Elena with an expression that mixed fierce love with barely contained fury. That baby is going to come into this world knowing she is wanted, knowing she is valued, knowing she has a family that will fight to the death to protect her. Elena turned to face her grandmother. "Why did you never tell me? About the money?" Ruth was quiet for a long moment. "Because I wanted to see who you would become without it. Because I wanted you to build your own life, make your own choices, find your own strength. And because," she paused, her voice catching, "because I thought you had found happiness with that man. I was wrong. I should have looked closer. I should have seen what he was. You could not have known. I could have tried harder to stay in your life. I could have fought through his barriers instead of accepting them. I could have been the grandmother you deserved instead of the ghost you forgot." Ruth straightened her shoulders. "But I cannot change the past. I can only fight like hell to fix the future." Over dinner that night, Ruth laid out her plan. "First, we get you the best legal team money can buy. Not that friend of yours. I am sure she means well, but we need sharks. Lawyers who have destroyed bigger families than the Bennetts and enjoyed every minute. Carrie has been helping me. And I am sure she is a fine attorney for normal divorces, but this is not a normal divorce. This is war." Ruth cut her steak with surgical precision. "I have already made calls. William Chen. You will not have heard of him, but Marcus's lawyers have. They are probably already losing sleep. What else? Second, we investigate. We dig into every corner of that family's life. Every skeleton, every secret, every lie they have ever told. That boy did not wake up one morning and decide to become a monster. There is a history there, and we are going to find it." "And third?" Ruth smiled, and for a moment Elena saw the young woman she must have been 60 years ago. The woman who had built an empire alongside her husband, who had raised 3 children while managing a business, who had outlived everyone who ever underestimated her. "Third, we wait. We let them think they have won. We let them get comfortable and careless and convinced that they have destroyed you completely." Her eyes glittered in the candlelight, hard as diamonds. "And then we strike. And when we do, they will never see it coming." 2 weeks into her stay at Ruth's estate, Elena made a decision that everyone around her opposed. She needed to confront Judith Bennett. Ruth argued against it. "Too emotional. Too risky. Let the lawyers handle it." Daniel threatened to physically restrain her. "You are not going anywhere near those people without security." Maria warned her about narcissistic injury. "Confronting her will not give you the closure you are looking for. People like Judith are incapable of genuine remorse." Elena listened to all of them, and then she made the call anyway, because she needed to understand, needed to look into the eyes of the woman who had helped orchestrate the destruction of her marriage, and ask the question that had been burning in her chest for months. "Wait, Mom." Judith agreed to meet at a tea room in Richmond, neutral territory between Charlotte and Charlottesville. Elena suspected she was curious about her opponent. Narcissists, Maria had explained, often could not resist the opportunity to gloat over their victims. The tea room was exactly what Elena expected. White tablecloths, silver teapots, women in pearls discussing charity galas and grandchildren, and summer homes in the Hamptons. This was Judith's natural habitat, the world of old money and older cruelties, where people smiled to your face while plotting your destruction. Judith was already seated when Elena arrived, impeccable in Chanel, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her posture so rigid it looked like she had a steel rod for a spine. She did not rise when Elena approached, did not offer a greeting, just watched with cool assessment as Elena lowered herself into the opposite chair. Elena, Judith's voice could have frosted glass. You are showing quite a bit. Lena rested her hand on her 8-month belly, feeling her daughter kick against her palm. I did not come to discuss my pregnancy. No, I imagine you came to plead. Judith stirred her tea with a silver spoon, her movements precise and unhurried. They always come to plead eventually. The smart ones do it sooner. You have taken longer than I expected. I came to ask you a question. How refreshingly direct. Judith set down her spoon with a delicate clink. Most of Marcus's former interests tend to cry and beg and make scenes. At least you have some dignity. Ask your question. Elena took a breath, steadied herself, looked directly into the cold eyes of the woman who had ruined her life. What weekend? I spent 5 years trying to be the daughter-in-law you wanted. I hosted your charity events. I smiled through your insults. I laughed at your friends' cruel jokes. I stayed quiet every time you criticized my clothes, my family, my entire existence. I bent myself into knots trying to earn even a crumb of your approval, and none of it mattered. She leaned forward. So tell me, Judith, why do you hate me so much? For a long moment, Judith simply looked at her, assessing, calculating, deciding how much truth to reveal. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that never reached the eyes, the kind of smile that made Elena's blood run cold. You want honesty? Fine, I will give you honesty. Judith leaned back in her chair, perfectly at ease. I knew about the affair. I have always known. In fact, I introduced Victoria to Marcus at the Children's Hospital fundraiser 4 years ago. I told him she was exactly what he needed. Someone from the right kind of family. Someone who understood how our world works. The words hit Elena like a physical blow, but she forced herself to stay still, to listen, to gather evidence. You introduced them? Victoria is my goddaughter. Her mother and I were sorority sisters at Vanderbilt. I have been watching that girl since she was born, grooming her for exactly this role. Judith's smile widened. You were never meant to be permanent, Elena. Surely you understood that. You were practice, a starter wife, someone to keep Marcus company while he learned how to run the company, how to navigate society, how to be a proper Bennett. But Victoria, she paused, savoring the words. Victoria is family. You planned this. Elena heard her own voice as if from a great distance. For years. You planned to destroy my marriage before it even began. Planned is such an ugly word. I prefer guided. Judith examined her manicure, admiring the perfect French tips. This is how families like ours operate, dear. Surely you did not think you were special. Marriages in our circle are not about love. They are about alliances, about strengthening bloodlines, about ensuring the family legacy continues properly. Your people would not understand. My people? Working class, scholarship students, women who think nursing is a career instead of a hobby. Judith's lip curled slightly. You were never going to fit into our world, Elena. I knew it the moment Marcus brought you home. That cheap dress, that nervous laugh, the way you looked at our house like you had never seen real wealth before. She shook her head. I told Marcus then that you were a mistake. He did not listen. He never listens. That is why he needs women like Victoria and me to guide him. Elena felt sick. 5 years of her life dismissed as a lesson. 5 years of love and hope and trying, reduced to practice. And my baby? Your grandchild? What was the plan for her? For the first time, something flickered in Judith's composure. A crack in the ice. A moment of something that might have been hesitation. Victoria's child will be the Bennett heir. That was always the arrangement. My baby is Marcus's child. A DNA test will prove it. DNA tests can be complicated. Judith's smile returned, sharper now. Especially when the mother has a documented history of mental instability. Who knows what really happened during the separation? Who knows who she might have turned to in her loneliness? There was that handsome doctor at the hospital, was there not? The one you always talked about? Dr. Hendricks is 63 years old and happily married. Details. Judith waved her hand dismissively. The point is, courts believe what we tell them to believe. Money has a way of making inconvenient truths disappear. Elena gripped the edge of the table, fighting every instinct that told her to flip it over and watch the silver teapots crash to the floor. You are going to lie. You are going to claim my baby is not his. I am going to protect my family's legacy. Judith stood, smoothing her designer skirt. Here is what is going to happen, Elena. You are going to sign the papers Marcus's lawyers prepared. You will receive a settlement, enough to live comfortably, provided you disappear quietly and you never speak of this publicly. The child will not be acknowledged as a Bennett heir. You will not attend family functions. You will not contact Marcus. You will fade into whatever unremarkable life you were destined for. And if I refuse, Judith pulled on her gloves, one finger at a time, taking her time with each movement, then we will ensure you leave with nothing. No money, no reputation, no show. And possibly, she paused, letting the threat hang in the air. No, child. I have connections in family court, dear. Judges who owe me favors. Social workers who know which side their bread is buttered on. Do you really want to find out how far those connections extend? She turned to leave, then paused at Elena's shoulder. A word of advice from one mother to another. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Know your place. Accept your role. Be grateful for whatever scraps we choose to throw you. Because the alternative? She let the sentence trail off. Well, the alternative is very unpleasant indeed. Judith walked out without looking back. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, each step echoing like a countdown to destruction. Elena sat there for a long time, watching the steam rise from her untouched tea. Her hands trembled. Her heart pounded. Every word Judith had spoken replayed in her mind, each revelation more devastating than the last. Then slowly she reached into her purse. She pulled out her phone and she called Ruth. She admitted everything. The affair, the planning, the conspiracy, all of it. Did you record the conversation? Elena looked down at the recording app still running on her screen. 3 hours of battery life carefully saved for exactly this moment. Every single word. Ruth's laugh was sharp with satisfaction. Triumphant. Dangerous. That is my girl. Now we have something to work with. For the first time in months, Elena felt like she was winning. Ruth's legal team was everything she had promised and more. William Chen was a silver-haired shark in a $2,000 suit, the kind of lawyer who made opposing counsel visibly nervous and judges pay attention. His team had filed counter motions that sent Marcus's lawyers scrambling, exposed the fraudulent account freeze, and forced the court to acknowledge that Elena had been systematically victimized. The frozen accounts were unfrozen pending review. The eviction was contested and overturned. Charlotte Presbyterian agreed to reinstate Elena with full back pay once the investigation cleared her name, with a formal apology for allowing hospital politics to affect her employment. And they had an evidence. Real evidence. The kind that destroyed lives. Security footage from Marcus's building showed him and Victoria together dating back over 2 years. Entering in his condo holding hands, kissing in the elevator, leaving together at 6 in the morning on days when he had told Elena he was at conferences in other cities. Financial records revealed hidden accounts that Marcus had failed to disclose during discovery. Shell companies in Delaware, investment portfolios in the Cayman Islands, at least $3 million that should have been considered marital assets. And then there was the recording of Judith. Every damning word preserved in crystal clear audio, her admission of orchestrating the affair, her threats about custody, her casual cruelty about Elena being practiced. We have them. Carrie had flown up to help coordinate with Ruth's legal team, and her face glowed with the thrill of battle. When this goes to court, they are absolutely finished. Marcus will be lucky to walk away with his shirt. Elena allowed herself to believe it. She decorated the nursery with Ruth, adding small personal touches to the beautiful room her grandmother had prepared. A mobile of paper butterflies she had made herself, a stuffed elephant that had belonged to her as a child, a framed photograph of the strong women in her family, 3 generations of survivors. She felt her baby kick and knew they would be safe. She started imagining a future that did not include Marcus Bennett's shadow hanging over everything. A small house somewhere quiet, a job at a pediatric clinic where she could help children without hospital politics, birthday parties and first steps and bedtime stories, and all the ordinary miracles of motherhood. She should have known better. The envelope arrived at Ruth's estate on a rainy Thursday evening. No return address, no postmark, hand-delivered to the mailbox while the security guards were changing shifts. Elena opened it alone in her room, not wanting to worry Ruth over what was probably just another legal document. Inside were photographs, recent photographs dated within the last month. Carrie and Marcus, together, in what was clearly a hotel room. Carrie's hand on his arm, Carrie leaning close, her red hair falling across her face. Carrie and Marcus looking at each other with an intimacy that went far beyond professional courtesy, far beyond attorney-client privilege, far beyond anything Elena could explain away or rationalize. A typed note accompanied the photos. Your best friend has been reporting to us since the beginning. Every strategy, every weakness, every secret. How does it feel to trust no one? Elena's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the paper. It could not be true. Carrie had been her rock through all of this. Carrie had been the first person she called when everything fell apart. Carrie had cried with her, raged with her, promised to destroy the Bennetts with the same fury Elena felt. Carrie was the sister she never had, the one person in the world Elena trusted completely. But the photographs did not lie. And when Elena looked closer, forcing herself to examine every detail, she recognized the hotel, the Ritz-Carlton in Charlotte. She recognized the date stamp. 3 days after Ruth's team filed their strongest motion, 2 days after Carrie had assured her they had the Bennetts on the ropes, 2 days before Marcus's lawyers filed a counter motion that anticipated every argument William Chen had prepared, because they had known everything, every strategy, every piece of evidence, every plan Elena and Ruth had made, because Carrie had told them. Elena walked downstairs on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. Each step was mechanical, automatic, her body moving while her mind struggled to process the magnitude of this betrayal. Carrie was in the study, hunched over legal documents, red hair falling across her face like a curtain. She looked up with a warm smile when Elena entered. Hey, I was just reviewing the financial disclosure motion. I think we can prove Marcus hid at least $2 million more than we initially thought. The shell company in Delaware has connections to... She stopped, seeing Elena's expression. The color drained from her face. What is wrong? Elena said nothing. She just laid the photographs on the desk. Carrie stared at them. Her hand moved to her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. Elena, please, let me explain. Explain what? Elena heard her own voice as if from a great distance. Cold, hollow, dead. Explain how you have been feeding them information this whole time. Explain how every time I thought we were winning, you were making sure they knew exactly how to counter. Explain how my best friend, the woman I trusted with everything, was sleeping with my husband. It is not. I did not. Carrie stood up, her hands reaching toward Elena. You have to understand, Marcus came to me months ago before any of this started. He had evidence of something from my past. A malpractice case I thought was buried. A patient who died because of a mistake I made as a young lawyer. If it came out, my career would be over. Everything I have worked for gone. So you sold me out. I thought I could control it. Tears streamed down Carrie's face, ruining her makeup, making her look younger and more vulnerable than Elena had ever seen her. I thought I could help you and protect myself. I only gave them small things at first. Strategy discussions, timing information. I thought it would be enough to satisfy them without really hurting your case. But it was not enough. No, Carrie's voice cracked. They kept wanting more, and I was in too deep to stop. And then Marcus, he was so charming. He made me feel like I was special, like I mattered. Like maybe everything I was doing was not so terrible because we had a connection. Stop. Elena felt something inside her crack. Something she had not even known still existed. Some final reserve of hope and trust that she had been protecting without realizing it. Now it was gone. Burned to ash by the one person she never thought would betray her. Get out. Elena, please. I made a terrible mistake. I was scared and I was stupid and I let him manipulate me, and I know that does not excuse anything, but please, get out of this house. Elena's voice was ice. No tears, no emotion, nothing left to feel. Do not call me, do not text me, do not ever speak to me again. If I see you at any legal proceeding, I will have you removed. If you come near me or my daughter, I will have you arrested. Do you understand? Carrie opened her mouth, then closed it. Whatever she saw in Elena's eyes made her realize that words were useless now, that some betrayals were too deep for explanations, too profound for apologies. She gathered her things with shaking hands, her laptop, her files, her expensive briefcase full of documents that she had probably been photographing and sending to Marcus all along. At the door, she paused. I am sorry. Her voice was barely a whisper. I know it does not matter, but I am sorry. I will be sorry for the rest of my life. Elena did not respond. After Carrie left, she locked herself in her room and did not come out for 2 days. Ruth left trays of food outside her door. Daniel flew in and stood guard in the hallway, threatening to break down the door if she did not at least tell him she was alive. Maria called every hour, her voice gentle and worried through the phone. Elena ignored all of it. She lay in the dark, feeling her baby move, and wondered if she could trust anyone ever again. On the third call, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. We need to talk. I have information you need. Meet me at Riverside Park, 3 p.m. tomorrow. I know what my daughter has done. My name is Margaret Chase. Margaret Chase looked nothing like her daughter. Where Victoria was polished and predatory, Margaret was worn and weathered. Deep lines carved her face like a map of sorrows. Her hands twisted nervously in her lap as she sat across from Elena at a park bench overlooking the James River. Her clothes were nice but not expensive. Her posture was apologetic, hunched, as if she were trying to take up as little space as possible. Thank you for meeting me. Her voice trembled slightly. I know you have no reason to trust anyone right now, especially not someone with my last name. Elena kept her distance, one hand resting protectively on her belly. She had told no one about this meeting, not Ruth, not Daniel, not even the security team Ruth had insisted on hiring. If this was another trap, another elaborate betrayal, she wanted to face it alone. She was tired of being protected, tired of being saved, tired of depending on people who might turn around and destroy her the moment she let her guard down. You said you have information. Margaret nodded, reaching into her purse with unsteady fingers. She pulled out a USB drive and placed it on the bench between them. My daughter keeps records of everything. She learned it from me, actually, back when I used to work as a paralegal. Document everything, I told her. Cover your bases. Protect yourself. Margaret laughed bitterly. I never imagined she would use that advice to destroy innocent people. Elena stared at the drive but did not touch it. What is on there? Everything. Margaret swallowed hard. Phone recordings between Victoria and Judith, planning every step of what they did to you. Financial records showing payments to the witnesses who lied about you. Medical records they obtained illegally, with notes in Judith's handwriting about how to weaponize them in court. Why would Victoria keep evidence of her own crimes? Insurance Margaret's mouth twisted. She never trusted the Bennetts, not fully. She always knew that people like Judith only value you as long as you are useful. So she documented everything, every conversation, every payment, every instruction. If they ever turned on her, she wanted ammunition to fight back. Elena felt the weight of this information settling over her. Evidence. Real evidence. Not just recordings she had made herself, but proof directly from the conspirators. There is more. Margaret's voice dropped. A recording of Marcus. From about a month ago when Victoria told him about your pregnancy, about the possibility that you might fight for custody. She paused, her face twisting with disgust. He said he did not care about the baby. Those were his exact words. He just did not want to pay for it. He called your daughter. He called her a mistake that needed to be managed. Elena's hand pressed harder against her belly. Her daughter kicked, strong and insistent, as if protesting the words of a father who did not deserve the title. Why are you giving me this? Margaret was quiet for a long moment, watching the river flow past. When Victoria was born, I had such hopes for her. She was so bright, so beautiful, so determined. I raised her alone after her father left, worked 3 jobs to give her opportunities I never had. Dance lessons, private school, the right clothes so she would not be mocked by the rich kids. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Somewhere along the way, she became someone I do not recognize. Someone who sees people as obstacles to be removed rather than human beings to be respected. Someone who learned that cruelty is strategy and manipulation is power, and other people's pain is just collateral damage in the pursuit of success. That does not explain why you are betraying her. Margaret finally looked at Elena. Her eyes were red-rimmed but clear, the eyes of someone who had made peace with an impossible decision. Because I looked in the mirror last month and did not like what I saw. My daughter is about to become a mother, and I realized that if I stayed silent, if I let this happen, I would be complicit in her becoming exactly the kind of monster I tried to protect her from. I would be helping her teach her child that cruelty wins, that honesty is weakness, that other people's lives are acceptable losses. She pushed the USB drive closer to Elena. I failed as a mother, I know that now. I raised a predator because I thought survival was more important than kindness. But I will not be complicit in this anymore. I will not help her destroy another woman's life. I will not help her teach another generation that love is just a tool for manipulation. Elena picked up the drive, feeling its weight in her palm. Such a small thing to contain so much destruction, so much hope. Victoria stored the backups at my house, thinking I would never check. Margaret stood, pulling her coat tighter against the autumn wind. She underestimated me. People always do. A sad smile crossed her weathered face. Use them. End this. And maybe your daughter will grow up in a world where women do not have to be cruel to survive. Why should I believe you? Margaret paused, considering the question. You should not. Trust no one, especially people who come bearing gifts. She turned to leave, then stopped. But ask yourself this. What would I have to gain by lying? Victoria has already chosen her side. I have no relationship with the Bennetts, no financial stake in this fight, no hope of reconciliation with my daughter, who will never forgive me for what I am about to do. She looked back at Elena with something like hope in her tired eyes. I am just a mother who failed, trying too late to do one good thing. She walked away without looking back. Elena sat on that bench until the sun began to set, turning the river gold and pink. The USB drive grew warm in her hand. The baby kicked steadily, a heartbeat against her palm. Then she called Daniel. I need you to have someone check a USB drive for tampering, malware, tracking software, anything that might make it a trap. She paused. And then I need to know if the contents are real. Where did you get it? From someone who might be an ally, or might be the most elaborate trap they have set yet. Elena watched the last light fade from the sky. I guess we will find out. 2 days later, Daniel confirmed everything. It is all there, every piece of evidence. You need to bury them. His voice was heavy with disbelief. Phone calls, financial records, medical files with Judith's handwritten notes, and the recording of Marcus. He paused. It is bad, Elena, really bad. The kind of bad that will end careers and possibly result in criminal charges. Elena felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been wound tight for months, squeezing her heart, making it hard to breathe. Then let us end in this. The night before the final hearing, Elena's water broke. She was in the study with Ruth, reviewing documents and going over strategy for the 100th time when the first contraction hit. Sharp and undeniable, a pain that cut through everything else and demanded immediate attention. Elena? Ruth was on her feet instantly, decades of calm command kicking in. How far apart? I do not know. Another contraction. Stronger this time. It is too early. I am 3 weeks early. Babies come when they are ready, not when we plan. Ruth was already moving, calling for the housekeeper, grabbing her car keys. We are going to the hospital. Now. The drive blurred together in Elena's memory. Ruth's calm voice giving directions to the driver. Daniel materializing from somewhere, his hands steady on her arm, his face white with fear he was trying hard to hide. Bright lights and antiseptic smells and nurses asking questions she could barely hear over the pounding of her own heart. The labor lasted 11 hours. 11 hours of pain that came in waves, each crest higher than the last. 11 hours of fear, of wondering if she was strong enough, if the baby was healthy, if everything she had survived would mean anything at all. 11 hours of Ruth holding one hand and Daniel holding the other, their voices steady anchors in the storm. And then at 7:23 in the morning, a cry. Small and fierce and absolutely perfect. The nurse placed her daughter in her arms, and Elena forgot everything else. The divorce, the court case, the months of betrayal and humiliation and loss. None of it existed in this moment. There was only this tiny face, red and wrinkled and beautiful. These miniature fingers gripping her own with surprising strength. These eyes blinking open to see the world for the first time. What would you like to name her? The nurse stood ready with paperwork, smiling at the picture they made. Elena looked down at her daughter and knew immediately. Hope. Her voice cracked with emotion she did not try to hide. Her name is Hope. Because that was what this child represented. Not just biological possibility, but something larger. The belief that tomorrow could be better than today. That pain could transform into purpose. That even the darkest night eventually gave way to dawn. Hope Michelle Mitchell. A name that carried the weight of generations and the promise of new beginnings. Daniel appeared in the doorway an hour later, looking uncomfortable and terrified the way men often did around newborns. His massive frame seemed too large for the hospital room, his military bearing softened by wonder. She is beautiful, he said quietly. She looks like you. She looks like herself. Elena shifted Hope to her other arm, wincing at the movement. Every part of her body ached. She had never been so exhausted in her life, and she had never been happier. The lawyers are asking about tomorrow. Daniel's voice was carefully neutral. Whether you want to postpone the hearing. Elena looked up at her brother. What do they recommend? Chen says he can get us a continuance, a few weeks, maybe a month. No one would blame you for needing time to recover. And what do you think? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I think you have been fighting for 8 months. I think you have survived things that would have broken most people. I think you have earned the right to rest. He paused. But I also know my sister, and I know that waiting would eat you alive. Elena looked down at Hope, now sleeping peacefully against her chest. So small, so vulnerable, so completely dependent on a mother who was running on zero sleep and pure determination. They have taken everything from me. Her voice was quiet, but steel ran through it. My marriage, my job, my money, my home, my best friend, my dignity. She met Daniel's eyes. They are not taking one more day. They are not taking one more hour. Tomorrow this ends. Daniel nodded slowly. I will tell the lawyers. When he left, Elena pressed her lips to Hope's forehead. They tried to erase us, she whispered. They said you were not worth caring about. They called you a mistake that needed to be managed. Hope stirred, her tiny hand opening and closing against Elena's skin. But you are here. You are real. You are perfect. Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks, hot and cleansing. And tomorrow, we are going to show them exactly what we are worth. Elena entered the courtroom looking like she had been through war. Because she had. Her dress was simple and professional, dark blue to hide any lingering evidence of childbirth. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun that made her look older, harder, more formidable than she felt. Her makeup concealed the dark circles under her eyes, the exhaustion that went bone deep. 18 hours ago, she had given birth. 12 hours ago, She had been cleared by doctors who strongly advised against what she was about to do. 6 hours ago, she had kissed her daughter goodbye and promised to come back victorious. Now she walked into battle. Ruth sat in the gallery, dressed in understated elegance that somehow managed to convey immense wealth and infinite patience. The kind of woman who could wait decades for revenge and enjoy every moment. Daniel stood by the door, arms crossed, his security training evident in the way his eyes tracked every movement in the room. If anyone tried to approach Elena without permission, they would regret it. And across the aisle sat the enemy. Marcus looked smaller than Elena remembered. Strange how destroying someone's life could make you shrink. His expensive suit seemed to hang on his frame. His face was pale, drawn, marked with the stress of someone who had finally realized that consequences existed. Victoria sat behind him, her own pregnancy more visible now, her hand possessively on his shoulder. But her composure had cracked. Her eyes darted nervously around the room, looking for exits. And Judith sat in the front row with the expression of a queen who had never lost a battle, who could not even conceive of losing. She looked at Elena with mild contempt, already planning how she would spin this victory at her next charity luncheon. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Patricia Hammond, called the proceedings to order. She had a reputation for fairness and an absolute intolerance for games. Perfect. We are here for the final hearing in the matter of Bennett versus Bennett. Judge Hammond surveyed the room over her reading glasses. I understand there is significant new evidence to be presented. Mr. Chen? William Chen rose smoothly. Yes, Your Honor. In the past several weeks, we have obtained substantial evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and witness tampering by the respondent and associated parties. Evidence that fundamentally changes the nature of this case. Marcus's lawyer leaped to his feet. Objection! We have not had adequate time to review this evidence. This is ambush litigation designed to, Your Honor. Chen's voice remained calm, almost pleasant. The respondent has spent the past several months ambushing my client with fabricated evidence, illegal acquisition of medical records, and systematic destruction of her reputation and livelihood. If anyone in this courtroom has been ambushed, it is certainly not Mr. Bennett. Judge Hammond's eyes narrowed. I will hear the evidence. Proceed, Mayor Chen. What followed was 3 hours of systematic destruction. First came the security footage. Chen played clip after clip from Marcus's building, each one dated and time-stamped. Marcus and Victoria entering his condo together, his hand on the small of her back. Marcus and Victoria kissing in the elevator, her arms wrapped around his neck. Marcus and Victoria leaving together at 6 in the morning on a day when he had told Elena he was at a conference in Chicago. These videos prove that the affair began at least 2 years before the separation, Chen explained. They directly contradict Mr. Bennett's claims that he was faithful until the marriage became untenable. Marcus's face went gray. Victoria's carefully composed expression began to crack. Next came the financial records. Chen presented document after document, hidden accounts in the Cayman Islands, shell companies in Delaware channeling marital assets into private funds, investment portfolios that had never been disclosed during discovery. Conservative estimates suggest Mr. Bennett concealed at least $3.2 million from this court, Chen stated, money that should have been considered marital property, money he deliberately hid to deny his pregnant wife her fair share. This constitutes fraud, Your Honor. Clear, deliberate, documented fraud. Marcus whispered urgently to his lawyer. His lawyer looked like a man who wished he had chosen a different career. Then came the recordings. The first recording, Your Honor, was obtained from Mrs. Judith Bennett during a conversation with my client. Chen pressed play. Judith's voice filled the courtroom, crystal clear and damning. You were never meant to be permanent, Elena. You were practice. A starter wife while Marcus learned how to be a Bennett. Victoria is family. The gallery murmured. Judith's face went pale. The second recording was obtained from backup files belonging to Victoria Chase. Victoria's voice now chirpy and confident. I told you hiring that fake witness was genius. She looked so convincing when she testified about seeing Elena with that man. Oscar-worthy performance. Victoria stood abruptly. That is not... I never... Sit down, Ms. Chase. Judge Hammond's voice could have frozen fire. You will have your opportunity to respond to these allegations. I suggest you use the time to consult with counsel. The third recording, Your Honor, is the most disturbing. Chen paused, letting the tension build. This is a conversation between Marcus Bennett and Victoria Chase, recorded approximately 1 month ago, discussing the pregnancy of my client. He pressed play. Marcus's voice, casual and cruel. I do not care about the kid. I just do not want to pay for it. It is a mistake that needs to be managed. Victoria's voice, laughing. Managed. I like that. Very corporate. Marcus again. If she thinks she is going to trap me with some baby, she is even dumber than my mother always said. This changes nothing. By the time my lawyers are done, she will be lucky to afford diapers. The courtroom went absolutely silent. Elena watched her husband's face as his own words echoed through the room. Watched the carefully constructed mask finally crack and crumble, revealing the hollow, selfish man beneath. Your Honor. Chen's voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the room. The child Mr. Bennett claims not to care about was born yesterday morning at 3:57 a.m. She was 3 weeks premature. Her name is Hope. He paused, letting that sink in. My client left the hospital against medical advice to be here today. She did so because she believes this court deserves to hear the truth, because she believes that her daughter deserves a mother who fought for justice, because she refuses to let these people continue their campaign of destruction for one more day. Chen turned to face Marcus directly. We have DNA results confirming that Hope Mitchell is indeed the biological daughter of Marcus Bennett. We have evidence proving that the respondent and his associates engaged in a coordinated campaign to destroy a pregnant woman's life, to isolate her from her support systems, to render her homeless and unemployed, to drive her to desperation. His voice hardened. And they did all of this not because my client did anything wrong. They did it because she was inconvenient, because she was practice that had outlived its usefulness, because a baby was a mistake that needed to be managed. Chen faced the judge. Mr. Bennett does not deserve custody. Mr. Bennett does not deserve sympathy. Mr. Bennett deserves to face the full consequences of his actions. The dam broke. Victoria turned on Marcus first, her voice high and panicked. This was your mother's idea. All of it. I just did what she told me. She promised me I would be a Bennett. She said if I got rid of Elena. Shut up, Victoria. Marcus's voice was strangled. Judith rose from her seat, ice and fury. I do not know what this disturbed young woman is talking about. These are clearly fabricated accusations from a bitter... Fabricated? Victoria whirled on Judith. All pretense of alliance abandoned. I have text messages. I have emails. Everything you told me to do, I documented. You think I trusted you? You think I did not know you would throw me away the moment I stopped being useful? Ms. Chase. Judge Hammond's voice cracked like a whip. I would strongly advise you to stop talking immediately and obtain your own legal counsel. The next hour was chaos. Marcus's lawyer requested a recess, then another, then attempted to negotiate a settlement on the spot. Chen rejected every offer. My client is not interested in settling, he said calmly. My client is interested in justice. Finally, Judge Hammond called for order. I have heard enough. She folded her hands on the bench, her expression grave. In the matter of Bennett versus Bennett, I am granting the divorce on grounds of adultery, fraud, and abandonment. Mrs. Elena Mitchell will receive full custody of the minor child, Hope Mitchell. Mr. Bennett will pay child support and alimony as determined by a full accounting of his actual assets, including those he attempted to conceal from this court. She turned her gaze to Marcus. Additionally, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation of witness tampering, fraud, and conspiracy to deprive a citizen of her civil rights. I am also referring the matter of illegally obtained medical records to the relevant licensing boards and law enforcement. Her eyes moved to Judith. Mrs. Bennett, the elder, I recommend you retain excellent legal counsel. Based on what I have heard today, you are going to need it. Finally, she looked at Elena. Mrs. Mitchell, I want you to know that in 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such a coordinated campaign of cruelty against a single individual. The strength you have shown in surviving this ordeal and in standing before this court mere hours after giving birth is remarkable. She paused. I hope your daughter grows up knowing what an extraordinary mother she has. Elena closed her eyes. It was over. 6 months later, spring had come to Virginia. Elena stood in the garden of the small farmhouse she had purchased with her settlement, watching her daughter sleep in the portable bassinet beside her. Cherry trees lined the property, their petals drifting like pink snow across the lawn. Birds sang in the morning light. A gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers and fresh earth and new beginnings. For the first time in what felt like forever, Elena Mitchell felt at peace. The aftermath of the court case had been long and complicated. Marcus faced criminal charges that would take years to resolve. The business was under federal investigation, his assets frozen pending multiple lawsuits from partners and investors who had discovered his hidden accounts. His reputation was destroyed, his careful image revealed as the hollow construction it had always been. Last Elena heard, he was living in a rented apartment, working as a consultant for a company that had not yet discovered his history. Victoria had left him the moment the money dried up. She had moved back in with Margaret, pregnant and alone, facing her own legal consequences for her role in the conspiracy. The baby she carried would never know the Bennett name, never inherit the legacy she had schemed so desperately to claim. Margaret had testified against her own daughter, against Judith, against the entire corrupt system that had tried to destroy Elena. It had cost her everything, including whatever remained of her relationship with Victoria. But she had done it anyway. Sometimes, Elena thought, redemption required sacrifice. Judith's fall had been the most complete. The hospital boards removed her quietly but firmly. The charity committees found new leadership. The society columns that had once celebrated her elegance now whispered about her disgrace. Invitations stopped arriving. Old friends stopped calling. The carefully constructed empire of status and influence crumbled to dust. For a woman who had built her entire identity on what others thought of her, it was a punishment worse than prison. Elena did not feel sorry for her. She did not feel much of anything about Judith anymore. The woman had simply ceased to matter. And Elena had rebuilt. She worked part-time at a small pediatric clinic in town, her reputation fully restored and then some. The story of what she had survived had spread through medical circles, and she found herself treated with a respect that bordered on reverence. Parents specifically requested her. Doctors sought her opinion. She had more job offers than she could count. But she had chosen this clinic, this small town, this quiet life, because she had learned something important through all the cow and pain. She had learned that success was not measured by status or wealth or the opinions of society. Success was measured by peace, by connection, by waking up each morning with purpose and going to bed each night with gratitude. Ruth visited every Sunday for dinner, arriving in her chauffeured car with arms full of gifts for hope that Elena repeatedly told her were too extravagant. Ruth repeatedly ignored her. "That child is my legacy," Ruth would say. "Let me spoil her." And Elena did, because Ruth had earned that right, because sometimes love needed to be expressed in presence and presence in the simple act of showing up. Daniel called every week, still gruff, still awkward, still the brother who would burn down the world for her if she asked. Maria sent parenting articles and therapy referrals and recipes for healthy toddler meals. They were planning to visit for Hope's first birthday, already arguing about who would get to hold her more. Family, Elena had learned, was not always blood. Sometimes it was the people who chose to stand beside you when blood failed. The doorbell rang. Elena picked up Hope, now 6 months old and full of curious energy, chubby cheeks and bright eyes that missed nothing. She walked to the front door, expecting perhaps a delivery or a neighbor. Margaret Chase stood on the porch. She looked older than she had at the park bench, older than she had at the trial. But she also looked lighter somehow, freer, as if the weight of complicity had finally lifted from her shoulders. "I hope I am not intruding." Her voice was hesitant. "I know I should have called first. I can leave if... Would you like to come in for tea?" They sat in the kitchen while Hope played with a cloth book on a blanket nearby. Margaret held her teacup like a lifeline, her eyes fixed on the baby with an expression that mixed wonder and grief and something that looked like hope. "She is beautiful," Margaret said softly. "She looks like you." "Thank you." Silence stretched between them, filled with everything that remained unspoken: the pain, the betrayal, the complicated web of guilt and redemption that connected them. "I wanted you to know that Victoria had the baby," Margaret finally said. "A boy. She named him James." Elena nodded slowly. "How is she?" "Struggling. The legal fees took everything. She is working as a receptionist now, living in my spare bedroom." Margaret paused. "She does not speak to me much, but I see her with the baby sometimes. Something changes in her face when she holds him. Something softens. Motherhood does that." "Yes." Margaret set down her cup. "I keep thinking about what kind of person she might have become if I had made different choices. If I had taught her that people mattered more than status. If I had shown her that integrity was worth more than success." "You cannot blame yourself for her choices." "No, but I can try to make sure those choices have consequences. Real consequences." Margaret looked up, meeting Elena's eyes. "I testified against my own daughter, Elena. I helped put her in legal jeopardy. I destroyed whatever relationship we might have salvaged." "Why?" Margaret was quiet for a long moment. "Because I looked at you in that courtroom, 18 hours after giving birth, standing up to demand justice for yourself and your child. And I thought that is what strength looks like. That is what a real mother does." Her voice cracked. "I wanted to be strong too, even if it was too late, even if it cost me everything." Elena reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "It is never too late to do the right thing." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I know I can never make up for what my daughter did to you, but I was hoping. Maybe I could help somehow. With hope, not as a grandmother. I do not deserve that title, but maybe as a friend, someone who could watch her sometimes, read to her or teach her things." Elena looked at the woman before her, a mother who had failed. A woman who had spent years enabling cruelty, then found the courage to stand against it. Someone who had sacrificed her relationship with her own child to do one good thing. "Hope needs people who will love her," Elena said slowly. "Not because of obligation or guilt, but because she deserves it. Can you do that?" "Yes." Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, I can do that." Elena smiled. "Then you are welcome here." Later that evening, after Margaret had gone and Hope was sleeping in her crib, Elena sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. The cherry trees swayed gently in the evening breeze. Fireflies were beginning to emerge, tiny lights dancing across the lawn. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She almost did not check it. She was tired of surprises, tired of messages that upended her life. But curiosity won, as it always did. It was from Carrie. "I know you probably deleted my number. I do not expect you to respond. I just wanted you to know that I am getting help. Real help, therapy twice a week, a support group for people who have hurt the ones they loved. I am trying to understand why I made the choices I made, why I let fear turn me into someone I despised. I am not asking for forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I am not sure I will ever deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I think about you every day, that I am trying to become someone you would not be ashamed to have known, that I hope Hope grows up happy and strong and knowing how much her mother loves her. I am sorry. I will always be sorry. And I hope someday you find peace." Elena read the message 3 times. She did not respond. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. Some things could not be forgiven with words, no matter how sincere. But she did not delete the message either. She saved it to a folder she rarely opened. A place for things that might matter someday, but did not need to matter today. Because forgiveness, she had learned, was not a moment. It was a process, a journey that took years, sometimes decades, sometimes a lifetime. Some wounds healed cleanly, others left scars that ached whenever the weather changed. And that was okay. For now, it was enough to know that everyone who had wronged her was facing their own consequences. Not because Elena had demanded vengeance, but because the truth had finally been spoken. Because lies, no matter how carefully constructed, eventually collapsed under their own weight. Hope stirred on the baby monitor, making the small sounds that meant she would wake soon, wanting dinner and attention and all the love Elena had to give. Elena stood, brushing off her jeans, ready to go inside and be a mother. the most important job she had ever had, the one she would never take for granted. But first she paused, looking out at the fading light. A year ago, she had walked into a courthouse expecting to end her marriage quietly. Instead, she had discovered that everything she believed about her life was a lie. Her husband was a fraud. Her best friend was a traitor. Her mother-in-law was a monster. And she was carrying a child that no one wanted to acknowledge. They had tried to erase her. They had called her worthless, crazy, disposable, a mistake that needed to be managed. They had thought that money and power made them untouchable, that they could crush one pregnant woman without consequence. They had been wrong, because the truth did not need money. It did not need connections or status or expensive lawyers or old family names. It just needed one person brave enough to speak it. And once you did, once you stood up and said, "This is what happened, this is what they did, this is who I really am," no amount of power could put that truth back in the bottle. Elena had spoken her truth. And in doing so, she had discovered something she had lost along the way. Herself. Not the wife Marcus had wanted her to be. Not the doormat Judith had dismissed. Not the victim Carrie had betrayed. But Elena, strong and scared and scarred and still standing. A woman who had walked through fire and emerged, not unburned, but forged into something harder, something better. She walked inside, scooped her daughter into her arms, and felt Hope's small hand curl around her finger with surprising strength. "They tried to break us," she whispered against her daughter's soft hair. "They threw everything they had at us, money and lawyers and lease and cruelty. They thought we would shatter. They thought we would disappear." Hope gurgled, reaching for Elena's face with chubby fingers. "But here we are." Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but for the first time in a long time, they were tears of joy. "Here we are, baby girl, still standing, still fighting, still hoping." She carried her daughter to the window, showing her the sunset, the cherry trees, the fireflies beginning their nightly dance. "This is our life now," Elena said softly. "This house, this town, these people who love us. This is what we built from the ashes of everything they tried to destroy." Hope cooed, her bright eyes tracking the fireflies with wonder. "And someday when you are older, I will tell you the whole story. I will tell you about your father and what he did and why he is not in your life. I will tell you about the grandmother who never wanted you and the woman who betrayed us and all the people who tried to make us disappear." Elena pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead. "But I will also tell you about the people who saved us. Grandma Ruth, Uncle Daniel, Aunt Maria, Margaret, who found her courage when it mattered most. All the ordinary people who showed up and said, 'This is wrong, and I will not be silent.'" The sun set behind the cherry trees, casting long shadows across the lawn. The last light of day streamed through the windows, warm and golden, painting everything it touched with hope. "And I will tell you the most important thing of all," Elena whispered, "that no matter how dark things get, no matter how powerful your enemies seem, no matter how alone you feel, the truth always wins in the end. Always. You just have to be brave enough to speak it." Hope yawned, her eyelids growing heavy, safe and warm in her mother's arms. "Sleep now, baby girl." Elena began to rock slowly, humming a lullaby she had learned from Ruth, passed down through generations of women who had survived impossible things. Tomorrow is a new day. Tomorrow is a new beginning. Because some endings were not really endings at all. They were beginnings. And this beginning, Elena thought, holding her daughter close as darkness fell and stars began to emerge, this beginning is ours.